Hello and welcome to the local marketing live stream with myself, Luke Hawley. And today we're going to go through how to define your customer and the three levels of knowing. And what I mean by that is, and I see this all the time when it comes to defining who our target market is either we get too carried away in one way or not enough detail in another. And here's an example, right? Let's say I'm a plumber and I've got a decent sized team, decent sized organization. Now, the mistake the plumber could make is go out and do a massive 12-page avatar breakdown, of all these kind of different segments and different things, and then spend a whole weekend on it. When, like, truthfully, the plumber's customer is, someone whose hot water unit broke 20 minutes ago, right? And the focus is about, how fast we can answer the call and get someone out, versus someone who might be in the B2B space who is doing a bit more of a scattergun approach to advertising or implementing some of the, again, multiple avatars and all this sort of approach to advertising, when actually there was only like 40 real ideal clients that suited them, and they want to save a lot of effort and time if they just wrote a list of like who the 40 businesses are and then reached out to them direct. So quite often where I see a huge disconnect between the strategic choices and the execution of the campaign is by having a truly a misunderstanding of who the target market is, whether it's both under or overthinking. So I really want to use today as an opportunity to kind of clarify, the approach to understanding who your customer is, and really think about to what depth of understanding that I actually need in order to generate the results I'm looking for. So very execution focused today as we define our target market. Now, as always, the resources from today's live stream you can get from the Buy Local Sunshine Coast website. So all the slides you can gain access to. There's a canvas to help you with this exercise as well. That it's free to download, no email address required, just literally just download the PDF and get to work. And my hope is that this will help you save time, save money, and provide the clarity that I'm sure you're seeking when it comes to who is my target market, how much do I really need to know, and then just execute consistently. The hardest part in marketing is the consistency piece. Keep showing up, keep doing what you need to. Using a line from someone in my network, John Bellamy, do the dumb and boring consistently. And that's my hope today, is kind of empowering you to do exactly that for that clarity of understanding. So let's jump straight into it. So I'll share my slides. We'll turn on the live chat as well. Let me just do that first. So the live chat should now be on. So if you're live, feel free to jump on and give us a hi or hello to let me know that you're here and you're with us. And if you're on social media, feel free to just drop a comment in as well and be part of the discussion. Alrighty, so I'll share my screen as well. Great. Alrighty. Oh, wrong screen. Hold on. Let me share the other screen. Here we go. Great. All right, let's jump in. So I'll one thing I just still want to share first is the resources for today. Let me just bring this over so you can grab it. As always, Buy Local Sunshine Coast website, resources, your local marketing live stream articles. So here's episode 10. Obviously, the summary article and video it's not on there yet, but you'll find the links as always just here. All right, let's pull up the PowerPoint and jump straight into it. Alrighty, so I've shared this example already. Why is it important? And I said, I see this mistake happening all the time across small businesses. And this is why it matters, right? The payoff is not that you waste less money, although you will reduce your waste. But clarity on who to reach and how, plus clarity on your positioning, makes marketing just simpler, right? And that's kind of the comment I made earlier. You get to focus on execution excellence. Just do the dumb and boring consistently over and over again to build your business. And for those who have followed me for a while, you will know that I've used this line a little bit of your ideal customer is discovered, not dictated. And it is this kind of core principle for me when it comes to defining who your market is the assumption we often take is that when we start a business, we know exactly who our target market is. And I would argue that we have a sense of who our target market is, but it's not until we go out and actually speak to them, deliver our services, get some real feedback, we get a better sense of who they are. And often our ideal customers are a combination of shared values, shared experiences, and shared intention. In other words, that they become a good fit because they respect the work that we do. They value shared values in terms of timeliness and payment, respectful communication. And then there's an experience there that allows us to empathize with our customers in a meaningful way. And that comes from experience. That comes from spending time with our customers and delivering services. So as businesses mature, that's when they discover truly who it is that they were born to serve. And to be honest, it is an ongoing exercise. Even with Buy Local Sunshine Coast, it's something that we're still working on to really refine. That balance between who our target market is, what is the offer, right, or the solution that we can provide that meets the problems that they're facing when it comes to the sales and marketing of their business locally. What's the offer or the membership package, and then what is the promotion or the methods of which that we connect the two together. So hey, this is your problem, we've got the solution for you. And as we're refining our membership, we're spending time on the promoter. What does that look like for that in the B2C space? Much more focused in on obviously on sharing what they do with the broader community. And today I'll talk about that as the level 1 and 2 type of customer. And the networker, how do we leverage our resources and our networks to focus in the level 3, which is focused in a warm introduction. So myself, Luke, actively introducing you to your ideal customer referral partners as part of the network and membership. But this is something that's evolved a lot over the last 6 months and continues to evolve. And I've no doubt you're going through something similar as well on how to really clarify the combination things to make sure it feels right on who you're serving and why you're serving them. The other thing I just want to highlight as well before we jump into the 3 levels of understanding our customer is that our customers are not defined in a vacuum. And I do think it's important for every business owner, or if you're watching as a marketing professional or in the business development space, that we're not just defining the customer within, whatever our respective little bubble is within an organization, but we are being very mindful of the marketing environment of which we're competing in. At Procter & Gamble, we used to refer to this as the landscape. We will conduct these landscape assessments or to make sure we had this clear understanding of what's happening around us. So that's from the macro point of view and the micro point of view. So from macro, also these are the forces we do not control, stuff like culture and technology and politics and the economy and demographics, these kind of large global trends that we have no control of, that's happening around us, but does influence and have an impact on our customers and obviously in the industry we're competing in. And the trick here is not to get too caught up in it and overwhelm yourself like, oh, there's all these things I've got to stay across of. But how do we do this in a way that's more passive, that we're regularly keeping ourselves up to date on what's going on? As that might be, making sure we go to our industry conference or the relevant association, that we have a couple of news sources that we can depend on, thought leaders within our industry. But we're actively, being mindful. It's going to the events that, for those on the Sunshine Coast, tomorrow we've got the Thriving Through Change Expo hosted by the Sunshine Coast Council, and all the local chambers and industry groups are part of that as well. A great way to get a sense of what's happening on the Sunshine Coast to support local businesses. What are those respective events that you can attend and get a sense of what's going on around you so you can make much more informed choices. And then the micro, it is helpful to keep an eye on your competitors. I hear this online quite a bit, is like, oh, ignore your competitors, no, your customers aren't, right? I don't say don't be obsessed by them. You do want to make sure that you're offering a real point of difference, but how do you know that what you're doing is superior or different or helpful or is keeping up with what's happening in the market if you're not across what your different competitors are? If you don't know what the options that your customers have, you might be missing the mark completely. So have a method in place to just passively stay up to date with who are the big players and emerging players in your field. And what are some of the different tactics, different things that they're doing, what niches are forming, so that way you can feel more confident in the choices that you're making as you continue to dominate in your space. Same with suppliers, referral partners. Do you have the right suppliers? Are you having regular conversations with them? Have a chat to the account managers, making sure that you're tapping into if they've got a new marketing budget or a new product we might be able to tap into, like stay informed on what they're doing and how you can make the most of it. Of course, keep the conversation with your customers, right? Make sure you're getting feedback and reviews and getting advice on how to refine and make things better. So just the so I just want to make clear is that before we get into defining who our customer is, we first need to have an understanding of the environment of which we're competing in. So do make sure that you're actively doing that. For instance, right, as a great example, right? So looking at the Sunshine Coast alone, they're forecasting another population increase of 200,000, right, in the next 20 years. That's massive, right? You can see what the impact that would be on the region in terms of the suburbs, the demographics, the new competitors in business that will enter the space, those that might be coming up from Sydney and Melbourne, where's the migration coming from to populate this area. So if you think about the population change just in the last 5 years, right, I think it was about 260,000 now to 350, so one of the largest increases that Sunshine Coast has had in a short period of time. And as that growth continues, but if you define your customer 5 years ago, things may have changed, right? And the landscape has changed with it. So it's really important to just find, again, passive ways to stay informed on what's going on. So, again, keep an eye on it. Maybe once or twice a year, be a little bit more deliberate and maybe take a day or two out a week if you can, but you may not have that kind of time. But at least kind of once or twice a year, spending a bit more time doing the deeper research, but having methods where you're, at least once a week, you're kind of coming across the odd article or the odd event to stay informed. But the trick here is about being discerning, right? So as, you're getting information about, the environment in which you're competing in, you're making decisions around, well, what's relevant now? What are things I might need to act on this quarter that might be a genuine opportunity or genuine threat to my business? What are things that might be relevant later? Right, so I might park it or have a closer look later. And that might be emerging technologies or new materials or supplies or new opportunities or new areas emerging where you might like, hey, there might be something in this that it might be worth circling back to in 3 to 6 months' time. And then most of it, ignore it, right? Or let it go, right? Outside of your circle of influence, not something that you need to take action on anytime soon, but at least you're aware that it exists. And that's the skill, right? It's deciding what deserves your attention. So a few different sources I recommend you check out, and this obviously for Sunshine Coast businesses, but for this site here, economyid.com.au, they do have a version for every major council in Australia. So definitely worth checking out. Basically pulls Australian Bureau of Statistics data and a few other different sources to provide like a region picture. So let me just show you what that looks like. This is the Sunshine Coast one. Really good, right? Like just jumping and checking this out like every 6 months or 12 months. And you can really dig deep, get an idea of the top industries in the area, the balance between homeowners and renters, the different demographics, types of businesses that are emerging, heaps and heaps of stuff, right? There's just a ton of really good data in here across different stuff from community, housing, all sorts of stuff. So really worth taking a good look. And there's a lot that you can pull from here to help kind of get a better understanding of the environment you're competing in. And get a better understanding of your customers, right? So there's some of that data is on the Sunshine Coast Council website as well. You get this on the Google, on Google, on Gympie and Noosa councils as well. Google Trends is actually pretty good for checking out different things that are taking place. And of course, your own data can be really helpful as well in understanding what's going on. But do check out some of those sources. All right, hold on. Let me, I did forget to put the chat to the right so I can see it. So let me just move this over here. Here we go. Cool. All righty. Okay. So, all right. So we agree, right? We need to know who our customers are, right? We agree that before we get clear on who our customers are, we should have an understanding of the marketing environment which we're competing in. So those things are very helpful. So now about getting to know who our customers are at the right level of knowing. So I've broken up into 3 levels: discovery, targeting, and partnership. And each of these are very different in the way that you define who your customer is and how you go about forming that relationship or forming that transaction with them. So discovery is most common for local service providers, right? So, home services, where it's high volume and there's already people already searching, right? Something breaks, so I find who's the person to fix it. I'm bored, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, those things. Quickly search, who do I go to help me do it? So for most businesses, discovery tends to be kind of where we need to go to. Targeting is what I call more like algorithmic segmentation. This is where it's very data driven. So high volume, but also high reach. So you may be expanding beyond just the Sunshine Coast. Maybe you got something that's national or international. Very e-commerce led, right? So you're selling stuff on your website. They're making high levels of purchase, and you've got a CRM, you've got an e-commerce platform, you've got multiple social media, you've got your website. So you've got all these different data points coming together to give you very rich data. And the trick is about then, connecting those dots and then determining from there how different segments are advertised. And it might be 7, it could be 13, it could be 22. This could be quite diverse depending on where the data leads us, and if it's a sizable opportunity to create something highly targeted. And then partnership, this is for often the B2B space where you're working with your clients. So maybe you only have 10 to 20 clients a year, serving, businesses. So it could be technology, websites, software, a variety of, coaching programs, workshops, training, all those sorts of things that you're delivering to a handful of clients every year. And this one, it's the knowledge or the understanding of the individual and the organization is much, much deeper. Where you are essentially through that like account management approach of deep research and then reaching out selectively and meaningfully versus, essentially like meta advertising and SEO and Google advertising that you would do in discovery. So anyway, let's go into this in a bit more detail across the three. So starting with discovery. So again, local service providers, high volume, where the customer is already actively searching. And I really like this kind of way to think about it. It's like there's a river of opportunity, right, in this level. River of opportunity, you're just walking up with your bucket and getting your fair share, right? So it's people already have the problem. They're actively searching for it. Like again, a hot water unit has broken. I want someone to fix it. They'll, check out maybe 2 or 3 sites, and really whoever picks up the phone first, that has some good vibes, that can bring someone out quickly and the price feels reasonable, they're the people who win. Right, so it's search and just exceptionally fast customer service. Like for this type of business, you really want to invest in making sure someone is always answering the phone when someone calls, and they're very capable in booking someone in to make sure they're getting service. And then also getting payment quicker. Like, hey, look, happy to book you in. We'll get someone in the next 3 hours. Let me grab your credit card details now, and we can lock in the payment for you. Here's what the call out rate is. If there's any more, the guy will let you know, and then it'll be charged, automatically. It's like just making sure you're just making it smooth, easy, frictionless as possible. And they're coming to you through search. Maybe they're asking, on Facebook groups for recommendations and advice. There might be people in the network they're asking for as well. There are different forms of search. Not everyone's searching on Google. It could be AI. They might be searching on TikTok, on YouTube. So there are a variety of different platforms now that people are searching, but that's the thing. They are searching for the provider to fix the problem that they actually do understand. They understand what's broken or the thing that they want, right? They want a haircut, they want the nails done, whatever it might be. They know what they're looking for, and they're just looking for a provider to deliver it. So this is kind of level 1. So at this level, we want to be really clear on the problem, right? And most important here is the need trigger. Like, what's the thing that kicks off the search process where they're looking for the provider? We want to know that intimately, right? What's the thing that breaks? What's the thing that they see? What's the conversation that they have? Like, what's the trigger that allows them to, if we go back to the decision-making process from previous episodes, where they go from recognizing that there's a gap between their current state and their desired state, right? And they're like, great, I need a solution to this, and they're actively looking. And then how do they look for that solution, right? And I've shared the examples already. Like, say, where are they going to search for this? And then when they come to our site, we want to be very clear on what our position is, right? Because the idea is not to serve anyone, it's to be really good at who we serve and make it very obvious when they come to the site. So if we're the best in town, then we should have the best in town website. If we're all about service delivery, then we should make it like obvious as, and when you call, someone picks up, it's a local, they're going to take care of you, you're going to be just fine. If it's around price, then let's compete on price. Hey, this is how we budget, this is affordable, like here's what we offer compared to others. Like you make sure those cues are obvious, right? And I've mentioned in previous episodes, you want to make sure you got those trust cues, the Google reviews, previous clients, testimonials, all that stuff as well to help reinforce what your position is. Do you win on quality? Do you win on service? Or do you win on price? And absolutely own it, right? That becomes your clear point of difference, and your website should be as clear as possible that you are the best at one of these three things. Right. And in this, you don't need to get too high in kind of psychographics. I'll explain a little bit more, but like we're not getting into their attitudes and their beliefs and the language they use in the kind of detail that we would for level 2 or even level 3. This is really about understanding these three things: the problem or the triggers, how they find it, and then when they do come to our page, we're clear on what our position is. As they're looking at the 2 or 3 options, why choose us? So if you are doing a little bit of search, like what questions people are asking, what are the keywords or questions that people are typing into search, into YouTube, into Amazon, into their AI tools, these platforms are really good. So let me just bring this up over here. There's a free version for both of these. They just connect up with your Google account. So this one is the Uber Suggest. This one's really good for just assessing your website, what keywords you're ranking for, volume per keywords or key phrases. It just kind of helps you kind of understand where the search is likely coming from. You can review some of your competitor websites as well. Who's best in class? What are the words that seems to be drawing most of their traffic? It just gives you some really good information. The fact that it's free is quite cool. And same from the same provider, Answer the Public. This is just a good way of getting an idea of, if I just type in like plumbing, not a great keyword to kick off, but search keywords, search. But it will give you some ideas of what are the most common questions people are asking in that field. So jump on, check the 2 out. They're really good tools. You get it quite a lot for free. You see how it breaks it down: AI, social media, shopping, search engine. What are the key questions? It's great, right? Really helpful in kind of determining that. And then you might then reflect that through your website. I think I've shared this before, but versus doing service pages now, focus on guides, unique, helpful content. So your local perspective, your expertise, sharing that based on the questions people are asking so they can come to you. But very search-driven is level 1. All right, level 2, right? This is about targeting, and I call it like algorithmic targeting. So like there is real kind of, to be honest, there's a real science to this, right? Where you get this right, you can then start to move those dials and make some healthy money and have some real confidence on what the return on investment is based on your advertising spend. So ideal for your e-commerce, right? Retail, software, particularly if it's like consumer-led or low risk for businesses. Obviously entertainment services, so high volume, low risk, and the platform that you're using often knows the customer more than you do. Now, here's the thing. Normally, I'll just share with you how to do it yourself. With this, in terms of if you are going to spend some real money on advertising, particularly around the e-commerce side, you're going to use this kind of algorithmic style targeting. I do recommend partnering with an agency. It's just way too risky to do this on your own. And AI, as good as it is, it's not good enough at connecting your systems together in a coherent, simple way where you can reliably kind of rely on it to kind of go to the campaigns. In a year from now, that might be a different response. But for now, like if you are going to look to spend more than say 5 to 10 grand a month, then I would be looking to partner with an agency that specializes in data-driven marketing and has a track record in working in your industry or in your category of product. Because you want someone who's got the background to connect the dots, right? They can bring the CRM, the web analytics, the social media analytics, your sales data from your platform, and then kind of connect all those dots together, get meaningful insights, and then able to kind of do high quality targeting based on that, and then build the content around each of those targets and the sales flow behind it. So it's a very complex process. And that's why, you spend more with an agency, is because you're leaning on their expertise to build out the methodology, to know the framework, build out the methodology, test it to make sure that it's working, and then double down on the content and the spend to deliver. Now, in episode 3, I did mention the $1 a day strategy, and absolutely, this is the way to begin with. So if you don't, if you're not looking to spend, 5 to 10K in advertising per month, you're just looking to get started, the $1 a day strategy is a really good way to kind of test content as you go. For those who may not have seen that episode yet, it's where you do a post on Facebook and you just give it $2, let it run for a day. Each day you do a different post. You give each post a boost. With boost, you make sure it's a targeted audience, so not just followers of your page, but go through and actually create an audience based on people who are generally interested or have indicated a behavior likely to take some sort of action on your post, and just run that. Great if you got like under $300 a month, right? Like you even do that for $90 a month as a way to kind of get started. And you go from getting, say maybe 100 views a month to thousands of views a month. And it's a good way to kind of test what content works, what people are engaging with, and kind of build your targeting from there. So it's a really nice place to start for those that are interested. That was in episode 3. But if you are going to take this seriously, when you're ready, go partner with an agency. And sometimes it's helpful to have an early conversation with an agency, get an idea what the pricing is and what's required to kind of get started. And then you can build towards working with them. So do recommend it here for level 2. Now, here's the watch out, right? Before you hire anyone, it's up to you to know your positioning strategy, or why people should choose to work with you, right? Your reason to exist, right? Because an agency can build the targeting methodology, the data architecture, and the campaign structure, but the agency should not be the one working out why anyone should choose to work with you, right? That's your job, and it's an expensive thing to outsource, and if you get it wrong, you will pay to broadcast the wrong message very efficiently, right? That's why a lot of people, even working with great agencies, can feel like they've gone in the wrong direction. It's because they've shown up with the wrong positioning. They haven't understood who their customer is. They haven't understood why people should choose them. They haven't been clear on what their offer is, and maybe they've been overly confident, right? And the agency has maybe not challenged them enough to make sure that there was clarity in that before they got started. And as a result, they've lost more than they should have. So please, and this is where a clarity session with me can be helpful if you're not sure, particularly before you sign up with an agency, to make sure you're very, very clear as to who your customer is, what your positioning is, right? Your reason, how you're going to serve, why they should choose to work with you, and you've got clarity on the offer, right? Very important to have those 3 things before you start paying an agency to broadcast it for you. There are a number of great agencies on the Sunshine Coast. I'm mentioning 4 here, but there is way more than 4 that are really good operators on the coast. These are some of the common ones that I tend to recommend. McKee Creative. So Jo, great for e-commerce marketing. So really, really good at what she does. So happy to, I've sent a few clients her way. Very good at what she does for e-commerce side. Kyle, Social Geeks, again, great for local service providers, particularly that level 1. He does some really nice work with search and Facebook advertising, really clicked in and very focused on delivering results. So always happy to recommend Kyle. Hulk Media, so Jason, Ellie, they kind of operate more as a fractional CMO or chief marketing officer, so very selective in who they work with. But I haven't met anyone who's better at data-driven marketing than Jason. So if you do have a ton of data and a healthy budget, and you're looking to go from 8 figures to 9 figures, I don't know anyone better than Hulk Media to get you there. And Attender, a great local agency, again, very data-driven, a great track record at working with brands and multimedia to get great results. But again, I can go on. There's a lot of good operators on the coast, and happy to give you some recommendations if you're looking for that around the level 2 side of who your customer is. But this is where you're, again, like level 2, to kind of highlight before I get to level 3, this is where like you're getting like in the minute data, like in terms of like behaviors. So like, male, this age, interested in this type of fashion products, that visited these websites, to do this thing. Like it's very like you're kind of creating like a very comprehensive series of data points that you're capturing in your ultimately into your CRM. That's why I call it algorithmic targeting. So Facebook's really good at it as a single platform, but this works best when it's multi-platform, centralizing the data, and you might end up having multiple segments you go after. So yeah, it's a lot, right? So I get that as I'm saying it out loud. But if you get this right, it is literally just the more money you spend, the more sales that you can generate if you nail this. But only really good for, as I said, like e-commerce and those kind of high volume, low involvement type purchases. Alrighty, so level 3 is where, like I said, like number 1 is where most local service providers fit. There's a few who fit in level 2 that are very e-commerce driven or selling stuff on their site. And retailers, 3 is like the other kind of big combination, right? So if you go like 1, then 3, then the next group is 2. And with level 3, this really is about depth of understanding, right? And as I shared at the start, this might be where you're only looking to add 12 to 20 clients a year, even less, right? Maybe it's only 3 clients or 6 clients. So you're doing, ideally, a lot of research up front before you make contact. Whereas in level 1, they contact you, then you get to know who they are. And level 2, they purchase from you. And then that's when you realize when you learn who they are, start to build some metrics around them. So that's kind of where this goes. And this is much more common for your sales and account management, business development side of things. And really leads into what I did in episode 2, right? So that the strategy I introduced in episode 2 is really tailored to this around partnership. Right, so kind of highlighting that, right? So levels 1 and 2, you don't know who they are until they either contact you or buy from you. But level 3, you know them and evaluate them before you ever make contact, right? So it's not discovery, it's selection. It's the strategy here for this type of business and for this type of customer. And as I mentioned already, I gave some tips on how to do this in episode 2. And what's great about being selective and actually doing the research up front, and using tools like LinkedIn to do it, it actually gives you permission to say no even before you make contact. Because partnership, these are people you're going to be working with, half a day, a weekend, a couple of weeks, couple of months, potentially a couple of years, right? It's different to a one and done sale that you might do on an e-commerce site, or maybe you bring a plumber into your house once every year or 2 years. This could be one of those relationships where you're seeing them weekly, right? You could know this, spend more time with this type of customer than your own friends, right? I mean, that's kind of the level of engagement and interactivity that can come from this type of client or this type of partnership. So that's why it's important to make sure there is a shared value, shared experiences, that shared purpose or shared intention I mentioned earlier, because what you're putting forward often, right, if you're delivering a service for another business, you're suggesting change, right? There's a change in mindset, a change in systems and processes, a change in technology, a change in the suppliers, raw materials that they bring in, the change in how they might deliver their advertising or customer service. You're suggesting a change. And that change needs to be not only endorsed, but the owner needs to be a true advocate, because they're the one who's going to get their team behind embracing and implementing the change that you're putting forward. So it's really important that they are a genuine advocate, right? This isn't some tick and flick. There's not some weird attitude. They're not responding to bad feedback, that you feel like you have a real partner in this to implement this change on behalf of this business. So I've kind of highlighted this already. So at level 1, same different regulars to recognize this. Back in episode 6, I said your ideal customer is defined by shared experiences, shared values, and shared intentions. It's the same kind of test, right? Making sure it's a good fit. Because level 3, you assess beforehand and you do it on purpose. And here's some stuff that helps to reinforce why that's important, right? 74% of B2B buying teams show unhealthy conflict during the decision process. So you often see it, right? People arguing, unhealthy communication, miscommunication. You will often see it when you start to spend time with a buying group of like, oh, this feels disorganized. Maybe they don't really have the support from management or from the leaders. You can pick it up, right? And mass majority of that happens during this process. 5 to 16 people in a buying group across many as 4 functions. As you know, right, if you are a solopreneur, but you're selling to enterprise, it can be quite a complex kind of buying group, multiple decision makers, multiple discussions in order to kind of get through with multiple opinions. And 2.5 times more likely to report a high quality deal when the team reaches consensus, right? So when the group is on board versus selected individuals, then you're more likely to have it roll through. So the trick here is not one person you can charm, but a committee that has to agree with each other. So even though you might do the dossier on the initial decision maker for the initial outreach, you don't just focus on the person who brought you into the room. You're actively serving the group. How do I start to better understand the people in the room so I can make connections with them, better understand their challenges, the problems, what it is that they're hoping to get out of my workshop or my software or whatever it is that I'm bringing to the table, so they feel like as a group that this is something that they can take to the management and get the approval for. Right, so this is really important. 20% relevance aimed at the buying group improves consensus, right, versus a 60% reduction if it's personalized to the individual. So very important to be pitching to a group, to the organization, than single individuals. So reach the person so it's human and solve the group's shared problems, right? Very important, particularly if you're asking for them to make a change. Right, so let's summarize. So we want to get to know our customers, right? There are 3 different levels of understanding. Level 1 is discovery, very search-driven, right? We're looking at search. We want to, and also we get to know them after they contact you. But the focus of where we want to know is what's the problem that we solve and how do they go about searching for solutions. That's key. Understand those keywords, key phrases, and the platforms that they use to do the search. We're good. For level 2, right? E-commerce, software, entertainment. Where people are making purchases online or in store, right? We want to focus in on data, right? The algorithms, all right? We want to tap into meta advertising and Google's Performance Max campaigns and TikTok and all these different places where we can advertise. Even traditional media, that's kind of where that fits too, if you get this right. We get to know them after they buy, but this is about feed the platform, own the positioning. Right? We're feeding it with content tailored to whether it's 3 segments, 17 segments, or 33 segments, depending on how big of an operation we have, that we're feeding each of those, right? And be really targeted with it. And then partnership is kind of the reverse. This is where we have fewer customers, right? Half a dozen potentially over a year. So we're focusing in on account management, sales, and it's about research and relationships. You may not do any advertising at level 3, right? And you might prioritize exclusively on direct outreach, right? LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, and just reaching out to people, attending expos and conferences and trade shows and getting in front of the decision makers in a very human, direct way to build that relationship and get the invite to come to their office and pitch, right? So we get to know them before first contact, right? Because we can identify these people, do the research, make sure it's a good fit, and then go out to them. So it's deep and it's on the whole organization. Everyone is going to be on the team that's going to say yes. They're the 3 levels, right? And then we can use these kind of segmentation variables to help us define who they are, right? So we can look at the demographics, age, gender, income, life stage, business stage, all those sorts of things. Very important at level 2, but can be helpful as part of our search criteria for level 1. It can be helpful in level 3 as well, but very important in targeting at level 2. Geographics, obviously very important in level 1, like what areas we serve. So we're very clear, like, yeah, we reach the Noosa area, the Sunshine Coast area, the Gympie area, whatever that might be. Then behavior, right? So obviously this matters every level. And for me, like behavior is defined as like what they do in your category, right? So buying for the first time or they buy repeatedly, like what is their current relationship with the thing that you offer? Are they an infrequent user, a frequent user, a heavy user, a super user? Like a cafe that might have, maybe there's 50 people that might represent, 80% of the cafe sales because they come in every day and they buy a coffee and their breakfast, and they come back in the afternoon for a top up. Like, who are they, and are we serving them as best we can, right? So behavior matters at every level because I've mentioned this before, us marketers, our job is to change behavior, right? Guide decision-making. So we need to know what they're doing now, what's the behavior now, and what is it we're looking to persuade them to do to get a better outcome. And then psychographics, right? And this is helpful for level 2 and 3 as we're now starting to think about how we, the types of content we create that they'll engage with. So what are their values, their attitudes? Do they like what we do or the category? Maybe it's a dislike, how those attitudes formed, their lifestyle, their motivation, those types of things. And as we even get into level 3, we might be looking at disc profiling and personality tests and to give us guidance on how best to communicate and engage with the individuals based on those insights, right? So we'll get really, really deep in how they, their process of thinking, so we can respond accordingly. So it can be highly data-driven to some extent, like lifestyle attitudes you can determine on Facebook. Motivation, not quite. That one requires deeper research unless you're doing focus groups. You can't quite get motivation from social media yet. So yeah, those sort of things. Cool. So these are inputs, not the answer. Filling in for a business that only needed hot water just failed within 20 kilometers is a 12-batch avatar over again, right? So it's about just being really clear on just defining it as you need it to execute. And then how you kind of bring this together. So I even though I made joke of the avatar earlier, I'm really making joke of the 12-page avatar, right? I'm a big fan of the 1-page avatars and personas because I think they're very, very helpful, particularly if it's simple. So 1 page, very easy to absorb. It has an emotional connection, so you feel like you're empathizing with who this ideal customer is. And you can tell you where, like how to reach them as well, right? So it's really clear on how they go about making decisions. So a really good example of this is from Spotify. Great, right? Single page, user persona, great image to kind of create like what's the experience like, a couple of bit of details, a really nice kind of bio on their relationship with music, their needs, their goals, their frustrations, their motivations, and what are they using, right? Great. Really, really good way to kind of summarize. So having, 1 or 2 of these will help you. And that's kind of the key for me is if you are creating a persona or an avatar, it has to be helpful in making sales and marketing decisions. It's got to be something that you refer to regularly to give you guidance on what you're going to do versus, do it over a weekend and kind of store it in the I'll come back to it later folder. All right. So it needs to be something that you're using every day to support your sales and marketing. Cool. All right. So let's close. I have provided you a canvas to help you make through these decisions. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So you do have this, as I said, free to download. Don't need to give me an email address. Just download the PDF and get to work. So it kind of helps you to first clarify what level you're on. Just make some notes about the environment in which you're competing in and making that discernment around what's relevant now, what's relevant later, and what's safe to ignore based on what you see around your industry and what's happening locally. And I've given you a couple of sources to use for that. And then starting to define who your target market is against these 4 segmentation variables. And then from there, you'll be able to craft your 1-page persona based on these things. And then, start to test it, see if you can find it. Because I think the other key test for the persona is, can they be found, right? Are they accessible? So, jumping on Facebook, if you're at level 2, and see if you can find them as one of the behaviors or interest in the search tools. If you're level 3, can you find them on LinkedIn, right? Is their job description or the title or the industry, can it be found on LinkedIn? And for search, using stuff like Google Trends and those tools I shared earlier, are they searching for these things? So there's a lot of good ways to kind of sense check the persona to make sure it is indeed useful, that we're capturing the right details. And then some action steps that you can take based on what level you're on to start to move forward. So feel free to grab that, download it. I think you'll find it quite helpful. Check your website as well. So make sure it's consistent with what you're doing on your website. It might trigger that you might need to make some changes because you may not be speaking directly to that type of customer defined through one of those 3 levels. Marketing clarity session with me will help you get there. And obviously this sits, to help reinforce what we're talking about today. I mentioned a few of the episodes, but definitely check out episode 6 around the strategy, episode 9 around the execution. And obviously today, defining your customer underpins both of those. So strategy, execution is underpinned by understanding who our customer is and the marketing environment which we're competing in. Cool. To close, buy local membership, feel free to join. If you are in need of clarity, please do sign up for Marketing Clarity Session. If you got this far on the live stream, use the coupon code LIVE and you'll get a $100 discount with your booking. So yeah, that's it. Your ideal customer is discovered, not dictated, as we just shared. I'll hit stop sharing now. I'll bring this down. Bring this over here. Oh no, it's over here. Okay, cool. Alrighty. So as always, thank you for joining us, and I'll see you the same time Tuesday, 2 p.m. next week. Thanks, everyone.